Thank you, Shambhu Prasad. Even though I was there as Agriculture Secretary while this was being discussed, let me start by saying that I am not responsible for 9B. In fact, I had very clear views on it. But there were champions of the 73rd Amendment who thought it's a good idea. But before I get there, I have had my entry into the cooperative sector on a very negative note, and I must share that with you. Very early in my service, I think probably the third year of my service or so, I was joint registrar of cooperatives, and I was asked to liquidate the Patna Urban Cooperative Bank. A lot of very poor women, vegetable sellers, and other very small people had deposited money, and some of the board of directors had taken loans, and very interestingly, by pledging the Patna railway station platform number 1. And that was the quality of the management of that bank. So my first reaction to a cooperative movement was this. You just do all these kinds and nobody does anything to you. Of course, it's another matter of record that we returned every single pie which was deposited by these poor people. Of course, we didn't return any money to the government because I thought government was at fault. The second was a very positive experience of trying to set up the dairy cooperative Sudha. Of course, everybody talks about Amul in Bihar, and in the state which is considered a graveyard of cooperatives, Sudha still thrives and it works, and it does bring lots of benefit to farmers. Having said that, let me go back to this. I think Ram Reddy correctly explained the 3 parts of that amendment, and let us, for the sake of argument, get 9B out for a moment. I would strongly believe that both 19(1)(c) and 43B were, I think that should have been the amendment, full stop. I would have stopped there. But anyway, there were people who thought otherwise, and well, what happened is happened. I was part of a lot of discussions, and therefore it's very interesting probably to look at what happened in those days. And there were state government ministers, there were a lot of people who discussed. They all thought that cooperatives suffer from objection. I've seen many of them. Even as chairman NDDB, I had to go with
Nandakumar ji, we are not able to hear you. I think your internet is, maybe you may want to turn off your video, if that's all right. You're on mute now.
Internet.
Yeah.
This is living in small towns have these disadvantages.
Yeah.
But that's fine. There are other compensations. So one was that registration was quite difficult. It was left to the whim of an assistant registrar. The second was frequent supersessions of cooperative bodies, and the administrator continues for pretty long time, and it suits the government to do that. And very often we have people who know nothing about either the business or cooperatives. And in fact, I once looked at the Tamil Nadu sugar cooperatives. They put tahsildars who knew nothing. In fact, I asked one of them, I said, have you ever seen sugar? He said, no, I've seen sugar, I've seen sugarcane, I've seen nothing in between. And nor have I worked anywhere in any cooperative society. That was the second problem. And the third was a very interesting dimension which was brought in those discussions, that you have amended the companies law and you have created these farmer producer companies which enjoy much more freedom than the cooperatives, and they are not under the state government, so they have no great fear of being superseded, etc., over their head. And that became the flavor of the season. I am sure a lot of people even now talk about FPCs as a better option than cooperatives. So why should we lose something called a cooperative society, which, as Dr. Thomas Isaac rightly said, are business enterprises formed by people? Do we treat them as private business enterprises formed by people? I think was the main question. And of course, I think I heard Jay Prakash say very strongly, why should you post officers of the government? And in fact, today, if you go and see any of the cooperatives, and I live in Kerala and I can say that, whenever I see them, they are quasi-PSUs. You go to any of the cooperatives in any meetings, they behave like quasi-PSUs because they have a cadre and they have all kinds of other things. So is there the professional management, which is what 43B would talk about, absent, deliberately absent, or absent by default? I think these are questions which we need to answer before we try and get an Anand declaration. Now, I also see a problem in the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court judgment has said that the 9B is ultra vires only to the extent of violation of 368(2). It still applies to multi-state cooperative societies. So what's the government going to do? Of course, if I wouldn't be asked an opinion, but anyway, some unsolicited advice would be just scrap it and be done with it. And don't do anything more. I think leave it at that. Let 19(1)(c) and 43B stay, and any state government which is violative of either 19(1)(c) or 43B, there are ways of handling it, handling that situation. So that's where I would come on that. Now, the problem arises with this judgment is that it really speaking, it doesn't quash 9B. It quashes 9B as far as states are concerned. So what happens to those sections where state government is mentioned in the chapter? Of course, central government, I mean the union government, I'm sorry, sometimes we use the central government, union government interchangeably, and I'm really surprised why the law department let it slip through in a document, and that speaks volumes about our lawmaking capabilities. In fact, in administrative parlance, we use it very, very loosely, but in legal terminology, there is nothing called a central government. So if you find a word called central government in the law, I think we are right. We have a right to question which is this government. So I don't know how the law ministry let that pass. It's something, of course, I don't want to comment on it. I've seen many places where other mistakes have occurred, but this is something that we have to worry about. But the question that is that, okay, this will apply only to Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act. That could be one position that central government may take, or sorry, union government may take, and remove the word state government from all the amendments and clean up the whole thing. So that will be in accordance with what the Supreme Court is saying. Is that an acceptable formulation? I don't know. I think we have to look at that. If the ideal is not possible, should we look at something that is feasible? The second part of the problem is 17 states have amended their Cooperative Societies Acts in accordance with these various provisions of the Constitution, and which is now quashed. So what do? Do they go back to something, or do they live with those, or do we accept part of it, etc.? Is again another debate, which I think people like you in the room will have to guide the state governments with. But I am worried about essentially one thing, which is, I think Dr. Thomas Isaac pointed out, about the accumulation of capital. Most cooperatives have this problem of keeping sufficient reserves to do anything that they want to do in future. And I've seen this in the case of sugar cooperatives, which are competing with private sugar mills. Because they distribute all their money, they don't even have margin money to borrow a large investment fund from any bank, even if it's available. So this is something that I would think would come in the way of the cooperatives being large, effective enterprises which will help farmers. So I think the play will be large number of FPCs which will be registered, because there's a government program of registering 10,000 FPCs. Of course, that's another thing that I do with Professor Shambhu Prasad. I don't think that's going anywhere in terms of its impact on farmers. There are just about 10 or 15 which are successful. But there is a number of 7,000 hanging around. There will be another 10,000, and this whole idea of one district, one crop, etc., is something which is totally against both the business plan of any FPO and also against the ethics of agriculture. So, and also against the principle of cooperation. So either way, that's not going anywhere. But still, there will be FPCs which will, though have a higher compliance burden in terms of company law, will compete with cooperatives in the same space. So that's one challenge that we'll have to see. How do we make cooperatives as efficient in terms of its ecosystem to sort of meet the aspirations of its members in a manner which is not interfered with by the government? And government likes to interfere, because what will the registrar of cooperative or the secretary corporation do if they can't interfere on a day-to-day basis? So whether that department itself should exist is another question that you may want to pose. The second challenge I would see is that this whole area of rural economy, which is based on agriculture and allied sectors, have not seen any great growth in terms of its link to the market through cooperative organizations. Now, one can always talk about Amul and talk about Gujarat. One can also talk about UP, where the entire dairy cooperative also failed completely. And today, Amul or Mother Dairy is kind of supplementing that effort. So different geographies, different states, different capabilities, and that itself is an argument for decentralization. But what about helping them develop good business models and also enabling them to keep some reserves as capital? Because ultimately, if you don't access capital from somewhere, and if you're going to depend on the government for capital, take it from me, they will also interfere. So is there a possibility that we don't look at government for capital? We tell them, look, whatever you're giving to a private sector enterprise, give us the same benefit, give us the same subsidy, give us the same interest subvention or whatever. Don't treat us differently, but give us more freedom. I mean, that would be my recommendation. Thank you very much, Shambhu Prasad, for this opportunity. And I'm happy that you are saying rediscovering Dr. Kurian in Anand. So, I mean, that itself is a great thing. Thank you.